Xavier Ames didn't flinch when the bulletproof glass cracked. He kept talking to the board like nothing had happened, but the moment the meeting ended, he told his assistant to find him the best self-defense instructor in New York. No more bodyguards standing in corners. No more feeling like a target. If someone wanted him dead, they'd have to get through him first. He didn't expect her to walk in wearing ripped jeans, a black tank top, and zero patience. "Xavier Ames," she said, raising an eyebrow, her arms crossed as she stood in the middle of his private gym on the 65th floor of Ames Tower. "That's me," he said, tossing his jacket on a bench. "And you're Fallon Ford. I'm here to teach you how not to get killed." He blinked. "That's direct." She shrugged. "You're not hiring me for small talk." Xavier had met presidents, royalty, billionaire investors who could bankrupt countries. But Fallon? She had the kind of presence that made you forget to blink. There was nothing polished about her, no designer heels, no soft voice. Just raw confidence and a quiet intensity that made him feel like she could snap his neck if he looked at her wrong. "All right then," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "Teach me." What started as a once-a-week session quickly turned into daily training. Fallon didn't care that he was a billionaire. She made him sweat, fall, get bruised, and get back up. "You move like a statue," she said one morning, tossing him a towel after he landed flat on his back again. "And you hit like a truck," he muttered, out of breath. She grinned. "Good. That means it's working." He found himself looking forward to their sessions. Not for the blocks or the counters or the drills, but for her. The way she never looked impressed by his wealth. The way she never treated him like a CEO. The way she called him out when he tried to dodge a punch or an honest question. One rainy night, after an unusually long session, they were the only two left in the gym. He leaned against the wall, chest rising and falling, watching her wrap her hands again. "Why do you do this?" he asked. "Because people don't take women seriously," she replied without looking at him. "And I like proving them wrong." He stepped closer. "You never talk about yourself." Fallon glanced at him, eyes unreadable. "That's not what I'm here for." "Maybe not," he said, voice lower now, "but I want to know anyway." She hesitated just for a second. "I used to work in security. Private contracts overseas. Then something went sideways and I came back home. Started training clients." "That's it." "That's not it," he said. She looked up, her expression guarded. "It's enough." He didn't push. But that night, as he sat alone in his penthouse with the city lights flickering below, he couldn't stop thinking about her. The way her eyes darkened when she talked about the past. The way she never flinched when he got too close, but always kept her distance. The next morning, Fallon walked into the gym to find a black duffel bag waiting for her. Inside was a brand new pair of custom gloves, stitched with her initials in silver. She looked up as he walked in. "What is this?" "A thank you," Xavier said, holding her gaze. "You've been patient with me." She narrowed her eyes. "Patient isn't the word I'd use." He chuckled. "Then consider it a peace offering." Fallon looked at the gloves, then back at him. "You don't have to buy me." "I'm not trying to," he said. "I just like doing things for people who matter." She blinked. For the first time, she didn't have a quick reply. She just nodded, real quiet, and slipped her hands into the gloves. The next few sessions felt different, charged, like something was shifting between them. One night after training, he offered to drive her home. She hesitated, then slid into the back seat of his black Bentley without a word. They didn't talk much on the way, just the quiet hum of the city, the soft rain tapping the windows, and the way their eyes kept meeting in the rearview mirror. When they pulled up in front of her apartment, she turned to him. "Why are you really learning self-defense?" she asked. He paused. "Someone left a message at my office. Said I'd pay for what I did." Her eyes narrowed. "Did you do something?" He shook his head. "No." "But when you run a billion-dollar company, people assume you've stepped on someone to get there." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she opened the door. "Be careful, Xavier." He caught her wrist. "Fallon." She turned slightly but didn't pull away. "Stay," he said. She exhaled. "Don't make this complicated." "I don't care if it's complicated," he said, voice quiet. "I just know I feel different when I'm around you." She looked at him for a long moment, then gently pulled her hand free and stepped out into the rain. He watched her walk away, heart pounding harder than it had in years. Xavier Ames had been threatened, targeted, and nearly killed in a boardroom once, but nothing scared him more than the thought of falling for someone who might never let herself be loved. The next time Fallon showed up, she didn't come through the front entrance. Xavier was halfway through his fourth set on the weighted sled when the elevator opened behind him. He didn't turn around right away, not until he heard the soft click of boots on the rubberized floor. "You moved the cameras," she said, her voice low but even. He let the sled roll to a stop. "I had them re-angled." "You were right. There was a blind spot near the northeast stairwell." Fallon walked over, her jacket still zipped, eyes scanning the corners of the ceiling. "That wasn't a suggestion. Someone could have walked in and you'd never know. That's why I fixed it." She turned to him. "Why didn't you tell me you were being followed?" Xavier's jaw tensed. "Because I didn't know until last night. One of my security guys picked it up on a traffic feed." "You have security watching you and you still hired me? You're the only one who doesn't treat me like a paycheck." Fallon's expression didn't change, but he caught the flicker behind her eyes. "I need you to stay close for the next few days," he said. "I'm hosting the Global Equity Summit. It's a 3-night event and the first gala is tomorrow." She crossed her arms. "You want me to follow you around in heels and pretend I'm part of the scenery? I want you to be yourself. Just be there. I trust you more than the guys I pay triple for." She didn't answer, but she didn't say no either. The next night, she showed up at the event dressed in tailored black slacks and a midnight blue blouse that made her look like she belonged in a room filled with hedge fund kings and oil barons. Xavier watched her scan the crowd the moment she entered, eyes sharp, shoulders back. "You clean up well," he said, offering her a glass of sparkling water. "I'm not here to be seen. And yet, you're hard to miss." Fallon ignored the comment and kept her gaze moving across the room. "Who do you think's behind the threat?" "I have a few enemies," he said, "but most of them would rather ruin my portfolio, not my life." "Any recent deals go south?" "Not mine, but I blocked a merger last quarter. Saved a smaller company from being swallowed whole." "Did they thank you? Publicly?" "Yes." "Privately?" "Their CEO didn't like being rescued." Fallon didn't respond right away. She watched a man across the room clink glasses with a woman in a red gown. "What's his name?" "Damien Locke," Xavier said. "He's here tonight." She didn't flinch. "Point him out." He nodded subtly toward the far end of the ballroom. Locke stood near the windows, laughing with 2 foreign investors. Fallon's eyes narrowed. "He's not laughing with them. He's controlling the conversation. Watch his feet, he's blocking their exit. You read people fast. I don't have the luxury of time." Xavier leaned closer. "Come with me." They crossed the room slowly, weaving through guests. When they reached Locke, Fallon hung back 2 steps, a shadow, but one that made her presence known. "Xavier," Locke said, his grin too wide. "Didn't expect to see you mingling. Usually you skip the social fluff." "Tonight felt worth the effort," Xavier said smoothly. "You remember Fallon Ford? My personal instructor." Locke looked her over. "In what exactly?" Fallon didn't blink. "How to walk away standing." Locke's smile faltered for a split second, then returned. "Charming." As they moved on, Xavier exhaled slowly. "You're good at that." "At what?" "Making powerful men think twice before finishing their sentence." Fallon's lips curved just once. "I don't like games." Later that night, after the event ended, Fallon followed him back to the penthouse. She didn't wait to be invited. She walked in, kicked off her boots, and headed straight for the floor-to-ceiling windows. Xavier poured 2 whiskeys. "You really think Locke's behind it?" "Maybe not directly," she said. "But he's the kind of man who hires shadows. He won't get his hands dirty. He wants to see me panic. Then don't give him the satisfaction." He handed her a glass. "You always this calm?" "No. Just practiced." They stood in silence for a moment, the city glittering beneath them. Then he said, "You ever let anyone in, Fallon?" She took a sip. "What makes you think I haven't?" "Because you never talk about what you want. Only what you'll tolerate." She turned to him. "You want honesty? Fine. I don't let people close because I've watched what happens when you do." They use it, twist it, leave scars that don't heal. Xavier set his glass down. I'm not here to wound you. She looked away. You think you're different, that your intentions make you safe. But intentions don't stop bullets, Xavier. And they don't stop people from leaving. He stepped closer, voice low. I'm not going anywhere. Fallon's jaw tightened. Don't make promises you can't keep. I don't, he said. Not unless I mean them. She stared at him, something shifting behind her eyes. Then she stepped back, breaking the moment. I'll run recon tomorrow before the second event, she said. Check entrances. Background everyone on the guest list. He nodded, watching her gather her jacket. You sure you're okay? He asked quietly. I don't do okay, she said. I do ready. When the door closed behind her, Xavier stood in the silence, whiskey untouched, the weight of her words settling like stone in his chest. He wasn't sure when it had stopped being about protection. But it wasn't about safety anymore. It was about her. The second night of the Global Equity Summit brought a thunderstorm so violent it rattled the chandelier above the ballroom. Fallon arrived early, her presence sharper than usual, her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense braid, her expression unreadable as she scanned the perimeter from the employee entrance. Xavier had barely stepped out of the armored SUV when she appeared beside the door, hand resting lightly near her hip, eyes flicking to the rooftop before settling on him. There's interference on the south stairwell camera, she said. Your head of security said it was a glitch. I don't believe in glitches. Neither do I, he said, taking her cue and heading for the service elevator instead of the main entrance. The ballroom was already filling when they arrived. Waitstaff moved like clockwork, guests floated between velvet ropes of conversation, and above the noise of laughter and clinking glasses, Xavier could hear it, tension humming beneath the surface. He knew the signs by now, too many eyes glancing at him, too many smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Fallon stayed within an arm's length of him all evening. When an investor from Tokyo tried to pull him into a private conversation, she intercepted with a subtle shake of her head. When a server lingered too long with a tray of drinks, she stepped forward, said something low and firm, and the tray vanished. But it wasn't until the auction began that everything shifted. The host, a high-profile philanthropist in a floor-length silver gown, took the stage to announce the final item, a private dinner with Xavier Ames to raise funds for a global education initiative. He hadn't agreed to that. Fallon stiffened beside him. Did you approve this? No, he said, jaw tight. I didn't even know it was happening. A setup. Feels like it. Before he could speak again, the bidding began. A media heiress from Milan shouted the first offer. A tech mogul from Berlin raised it. The air tightened as numbers climbed. Fallon didn't look at him, but he could feel the tension rolling off her. When the final bid landed at 50,000, the host clapped and declared the winner with dramatic flair. The crowd applauded. Xavier didn't. Backstage, he pulled Fallon aside. I'm pulling out of the last event, he said. This isn't about business anymore. Someone's trying to make a statement. They want to rattle you, Fallon said. They're testing how exposed you are. He looked at her. I want you with me full time. Not just for events. I want you at the office. At meetings. Anywhere I go. That's not what I signed up for. I know. But I trust you more than anyone else. Fallon hesitated. This level of visibility. It's going to draw attention. People will ask questions. Let them, he said. I don't care what anyone thinks. She didn't answer right away. Then, I'll need access to your private schedule. And your travel manifests. You'll have them. As they stepped outside into the storm, Fallon paused beneath the awning, watching the lightning fork above the skyline. Why didn't you tell me about the stalker incident last year? She asked. Xavier turned to her, surprised. How do you know about that? I found the police report. It was buried, but I've been digging. He exhaled. I handled it quietly. She was a former employee. Obsessed. Started sending letters to my apartment. The legal team paid her off to disappear. That wasn't just obsession, Fallon said. It was surveillance. She knew your routines, your staff rotations. A chill slid down his spine. You think it's connected? Maybe not directly, but it means you've been watched before. Patterns matter. He nodded slowly. I'll give you everything. No redactions. The car pulled up, but he didn't move. Fallon, he said, voice low. Last night after you left, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. She glanced at him without turning fully. Rain misted the air around them. I don't want to hurt you, he continued, but I can't pretend this is just professional anymore. You matter to me. Fallon didn't speak. Her silence wasn't rejection, it was armor. I know you don't trust easily, he went on, but I'm asking you to try. Not because I need protection, but because I want you beside me. For more than just threats. She looked at him then, something flickering in her eyes. Not softness. Not surrender. But a crack in the wall. I can't promise anything, she said. But I won't run. It wasn't a yes. But it wasn't a no either. As they stepped into the car, Xavier's phone buzzed. He glanced down, expecting an update from his COO. It wasn't. A photo. Sent from an unknown number. It was a picture of Fallon. From earlier that night. Standing alone by the bar, head tilted, watching the crowd. The caption read, "She can't protect you from everything." Xavier's blood turned to ice. He showed it to her wordlessly. Fallon studied the image. This wasn't taken with a phone. It's from a low-mounted lens. Hidden in the room. He swallowed. Then they were inside. They still are, she said. And now it's not just about you. She met his eyes. It's about us. Xavier didn't wait for his driver to park before stepping out of the car. Fallon was already calling in a favor. Her voice low and clipped as she strode beside him through the underground garage of Ames Tower. The moment the elevator doors closed, she hung up. I've got a contact scrubbing the entire guest list from last night. Facial recognition, background flags, the works. Whoever took that picture, if they're in any database, I'll find them. He watched her, jaw tight. What if they're not? What if this is someone who knows how to stay invisible? Then I'll dig deeper, she said. Everyone leaves a trail. You just have to know where to look. No hesitation. No fear. Just resolve. Even now, when the threat had shifted toward her, Fallon didn't flinch. She adjusted. Calculated. Advanced. Xavier reached for her hand. She let him take it. They're watching you now, he said. Not just me. I knew that the second they sent the photo. I should have pulled you out. She turned toward him sharply. Don't you dare. That's not your call to make. I'm not trying to control you, then don't act like you own my safety. Her voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut glass. I know what I'm risking. I chose this. He studied her. You still choosing it now? Fallon didn't look away. If I wasn't, I wouldn't be here. The elevator opened directly into his penthouse. Security was already tightening, motion sensors blinking in the corners, two of his techs wiring the windows with new proximity lines. Xavier tilted his head toward the hallway. She followed him into the study, door closing behind them. I've had this place swept every week by professionals, he said. But if they got close enough to photograph you at that angle, then either someone bypassed the security or someone was invited, she finished. They didn't hack their way in. They were already inside. He sat on the edge of the desk. That narrows it down to 27 people. All attendees were verified. Background checked. Cleared. Not everyone who attends comes through the front door, she said. Staff rotations. Vendors. Catering. That's where the real risk hides. Xavier nodded slowly. Then we start there. Fallon leaned against the bookshelf, arms crossed. I need access to your internal logs, entry codes, vendor contracts, and I'll need to speak to your head of logistics directly, not through your assistant. Done. Anything else? She hesitated, then looked at him. I want you off the grid for 72 hours. His brows lifted. Fallon, I'm serious. I can't protect you when you're sitting in boardrooms with 50 people and a dozen exits. Let me control the environment. Where would we go? I know a place. No signals. No traffic. No cameras. He gave a short breath of disbelief. You're asking me to vanish in the middle of the biggest financial summit of the year. I'm telling you it's the only way to draw them out. If they see you disappear, they'll get nervous. They'll start moving. He stood slowly. And you really think this place is safe? I built it, she said. Stone by stone. After I left my old detail, no one knows about it. Not even my family. He didn't ask why. He just nodded. They left the tower at dawn. No driver. No convoy. Just a matte-black SUV Fallon kept in a storage garage in Queens. She drove without speaking for the first hour, eyes locked on the road, hands steady on the wheel. Where are we? Xavier asked as the city gave way to forest-lined backroads. Upstate. 40 miles outside the nearest cell tower. It's an old ranger cabin. Reinforced. Hidden behind a private gate. You always keep a hideout ready? She gave a glance that bordered on something like amusement. Comes in handy when people try to kill you. The cabin appeared after another half-hour, tucked behind a thicket of trees and a steep gravel incline. It was unassuming weathered wood, steel-framed windows, a wraparound porch, but Xavier could feel the silence here. Not just quiet. Stillness. Like the world had forgotten this place existed. Inside, it was clean and spare. No photos. No clutter. Just essentials. A fireplace. Pair of worn armchairs. A kitchen with cast iron pans. Fallon locked the door behind them, then turned. You'll sleep upstairs. There's a rifle in the closet and a panic latch under the bed. Don't use either unless you have to. Understood. She paused, then added, I'm downstairs. If anything feels wrong, wake me. That night, the storm returned. But this time, Xavier didn't hear rain on glass or cars in the distance. Just the sound of wind and trees. He couldn't sleep. He found Fallon sitting on the porch, knees drawn up, wearing an old sweatshirt and watching the dark. You always this calm when you're being hunted? He asked, sitting beside her. She didn't look at him. No, but I'm good at pretending. A beat passed. I looked you up, he said. After you left that first night. Found your old unit. The ones who didn't make it. She didn't move. You were the only survivor, he added. Fallon's voice was barely audible. It was an ambush. We were told the building was clear, but it wasn't. You blame yourself? I made the call to enter early. I thought we were losing our window. I was wrong. Xavier didn't speak. Just reached over, slowly, and took her hand. She let him. You're not the only one who carries scars no one sees, he said. I've made decisions that cost people everything. Not bullets, but careers. Families. I've destroyed lives from behind a desk. Fallon turned to him then, really looked at him. And something cracked between them. Not from pain. From recognition. He leaned forward. She didn't stop him. Their first kiss wasn't soft. It wasn't hesitant. It was desperate, fierce, like two people who had fought too long to keep the world out and were finally letting someone in. When they pulled apart, Fallon rested her forehead against his. I wasn't supposed to feel this, she whispered. Neither was I. You're the client. You're the reason I still feel alive. She closed her eyes. I don't want to lose you, he said. You won't. The next morning brought clarity. Fallon's contact had found something. A vendor from the event had used a false ID, clean credentials. But the fingerprint scan had been bypassed. The equipment used was military grade. This is bigger than Locke, Xavier said, pacing the living room. Who else would have access to that? Fallon's eyes narrowed. Someone with training. Someone who knew exactly where I'd be and how close I'd stand to you. Realization flickered in her gaze. She grabbed her phone and pulled up the guest list again. Here, she said. This guy. He's not press. He's not finance. Why was he even invited? Xavier looked at the name. I've never met him, he said. But his company has funding from one of my competitors. Locke's not the puppet master. He's a middleman. Fallon was already moving. We go back tonight. Quietly. Let them think the plan worked. Then we finish this. Xavier caught her arm. And after, she looked at him. After we stop them. What then? She hesitated. I want you in my life, he said. Not just in my shadow. Not just when I'm afraid. Fallon's voice was steady. You sure you can live with someone who doesn't back down? He smiled, for the first time in days. That's the only kind of person I want. 3 days later, the trap was sprung. The fake vendor returned for a follow-up job at another event a private fundraiser Xavier was supposed to attend. What he didn't expect was Fallon stepping out of the shadows with a badge clipped to her belt and 2 federal officers at her back. Turned out, Fallon had more than contacts. She had connections. The man was arrested without incident. Locke's name came up in the investigation, but he'd already fled the country. Xavier stood beside her on the courthouse steps afterward, reporters shouting behind barricades, cameras flashing. He didn't care about the chaos. He only cared about the woman standing beside him. Marry me, he said without warning. Fallon blinked. What? Marry me? She stared at him, and for the first time her expression wasn't guarded. It was open, bare. You're serious? I've never been more. Fallon exhaled. I don't do easy, she said. I don't want easy, he replied. I want real. She stepped closer. Then yes. 1 year later, they were married in a private ceremony on the rooftop of Ames Tower. No press, no investors, just people who mattered. And Fallon, walking toward him in a silver satin dress, eyes locked on his like no one else existed. Xavier had once believed love was a luxury, something for people who didn't have empires to protect. But Fallon had taught him that the right woman wasn't a weakness. She was armor, and he would never let her go. The morning air in the Swiss Alps was thin and crisp, the kind that filled your lungs with silence instead of sound. The private chalet nestled between snow-dusted pines was far from the chaos of Manhattan, far from the boardrooms and headlines that had once consumed Xavier's life. Fallon stood barefoot on the balcony, watching the distant peaks catch the early sunlight. A fire crackled softly inside behind her, and the scent of pine smoke curled into the chilled air. Xavier stepped out, wrapping a thick wool blanket around her shoulders from behind. She leaned back into him without a word. I've never heard you sleep so deeply, she said, tilting her head toward him. I've never had a reason to feel safe before. Her fingers closed around the edge of the blanket. You're not used to slowing down. I thought I'd hate it, he said. But with you here, it feels like I was wrong about a lot of things. They didn't speak for a while. The mountains didn't demand it. Eventually, she said, I've been thinking about the next step. He moved to face her. Tell me. I've been offered a position. Private security consulting for a humanitarian coalition. It's low profile, international, and they need someone who can train local teams in high-risk areas. No field work. Just strategy. He studied her. Do you want it? I do. But I'd only take it if we could stay based in New York. I'm not going back to living out of a duffel bag. Xavier stepped closer, cupping the side of her face. I want you to take it. Whatever makes you feel like you're doing something meaningful, I'll support it. Always. You're not worried I'll get restless? I think you'll always need challenge. I just want to be the place you come home to. She smiled then. Not the guarded kind. Not one laced with old shadows. Just quiet joy. I never imagined having a home like this, she said. Not just the place. You. He kissed her forehead. Then let's build it together. Later that day, they returned to the city. Xavier's name had been cleared in the investigation, and Locke had been arrested in Singapore, thanks to a tip Fallon had forwarded through her contacts. The man who'd orchestrated the threat was facing multiple charges, none of which would touch Xavier again. Fallon met with the coalition director 2 days after they returned. Xavier waited for her outside the building, leaning against the car in a dark coat, hands in his pockets. She walked up to him with calm purpose. It's settled. I'll start in 6 weeks. They're setting up a hybrid structure, half remote, half on site. I'll be able to train operatives from our apartment. Perfect, he said, opening the car door for her. I was hoping you'd say yes. As they drove through Midtown, she looked over at him. You never asked me what I want our life to look like. I figured I'd wait until we weren't being stalked. I want something real. And quiet. I want our own routines. Morning runs. Late dinners. A life without pretending. I want to wake up and know I'm not waiting for something to go wrong. Xavier reached for her hand. Then that's what we built. The next weekend, they held a small celebration on the rooftop of Ames Tower. Not a party, just close friends, his sister, and a few people Fallon had known since her earliest training days. There were fairy lights, string music, and a warm breeze that wrapped around them like a promise. Xavier stood at the edge of the rooftop, glass of wine in hand, watching Fallon speak to his COO's wife. She was laughing, her posture relaxed, her gaze bright and unguarded. For the first time, he saw her not as the woman who'd protected him, or the one who'd taught him how to fight, but as the person who'd taught him how to stop. She caught him staring and walked over. "You look like you're about to make a speech," she teased. "I was thinking about what I'd say if I did. Want to practice?" He set his glass aside. "I'd say that I once thought love was just another risk, that letting someone too close meant losing control. But then I met someone who made me realize that control was never the goal. It was peace. And she gave it to me." Fallon's gaze softened. "That's a good speech. I left out the part where I fell in love with her the second she knocked me on the floor of my own gym." She laughed. "And here I thought you were just a glutton for punishment." He leaned in. "Only yours." That night, they stayed on the rooftop long after everyone had gone. The skyline shimmered around them. No threats. No shadows. Just the hum of a city that finally felt like theirs. Months passed. Fallon's work with the coalition expanded and she began mentoring young recruits remotely. Xavier downsized his public presence, stepping away from unnecessary spotlight and focusing on innovation, sustainability, and meaningful ventures. Together, they became a quiet force, unseen but undeniable. One morning, as they sat across from each other on the balcony, coffee mugs in hand, Fallon slid a folded piece of paper across the table. He opened it. A sonogram. His eyes lifted to hers, wide. She nodded. "I found out yesterday." He crossed to her in an instant, dropping to his knees in front of her chair. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He pressed his forehead against her stomach, overwhelmed. Fallon ran her fingers through his hair. "We're going to be so bad at lullabies. I'll learn guitar. I'll write lullabies." She laughed, eyes-filling. "You're really going to be a dad. And you," he said, looking up with wonder, "you're going to be the fiercest, most incredible mother this world's ever seen." They stayed like that until the sun moved across the sky. Later, Xavier sent a message to his assistant, cancel all meetings for the week. He had more important things to do, like painting the nursery, learning to braid hair, and making room in their already extraordinary life for something even more miraculous. In the end, Fallon didn't just teach Xavier how to protect himself. She taught him how to live without armor. And he gave her the one thing she never thought she'd have. A home that didn't need walls to keep danger out, just love to keep everything else in.